have wild cards. We're going to talk about wild cards, which are big surprise events that kind of change everything and send them off in a new kind of direction. But anyway, I mean, it's going to be really big. And the things that it's not going to be big everywhere, right? Here's the Europeans have an infertility time bomb. They've got a warning that says that, you know, they're not producing as fast. And so where is all of the production in population coming? Well, it's happening in Asia and in Africa. You see here this is 1950, 1995, 2025, and 2050. So the big black one is 2050, 2025 is the second one, and so on. And so you can just look here quickly, and you can see it's not in Oceania and North America, it's in Africa, and particularly in Asia. And where is it in Asia? It's in Asia, and it's in China, and it's in India. That's where the big population is growing. And so the red line is China. The blue line is the population projections for India, and what you can tell when you look out here is somewhere around 2030 or 2035, India overtakes China as being the most populous country in the world. And so you've got these two giant, you know, 1.4 billion plus kind of, see it's up here about 1.4 billion, about where we are right in here, and you know, and it starts to tail off a little bit, but nevertheless you have huge numbers of people, and it's all mostly in Asia. Why is that important? Because those two countries have 8 to 10% GDPs. I mean, their economies are just going faster and faster and faster. And by the way, if they don't keep their economies going faster and faster and faster, they got problems, really big problems, because they start to have, because they got so many people, and if they can't support them and they can't keep them encouraged and have hope and so on, then you get domestic instability. And you got to keep that in mind, because we'll come back to that in a minute. That their governments have this extraordinary pressure to kind of keep things going, because if it doesn't, it starts to come apart. In the energy area, you've got big issue is peak oil. You're going to read about this more and more in the coming years. And peak oil is essentially the notion that we're running out of the available oil. That we've gotten to the peak and we're going to go down. It isn't all gone. It's just that you're going to have less and less of it that's being pumped in economical kind of ways. And we've peaked in the United States back a number of years ago, and it's peaked other kind of places. And this is a kind of a famous curve by King Hubbard, and he says that, you know, somewhere around 2010 or something, it looks like it'll peak and go down. Well, the numbers now look like it's peaked last year, or 2006, and it's flat for the last 2 years. And the Saudis are not pumping anymore, and, you know, our good president's over there asking them, please pump more oil, and they don't. And there must be a reason, huh? And the North Sea has peaked and gone down. Mexican oil has peaked and gone down. And so what you've got is every indication that suggests that we've hit the top and we're going to start down. We are at the beginning of the end of the age of oil. That's important. That's important because everything that we wear and what we do and all that kind of stuff, all of the way we live, is all a product of petroleum. The way our whole lifestyle on this planet, the thing that has fueled everything is petroleum. And once you hit that peak and go down, you got some really interesting kind of problems, because the drop-off, when it hits the peak and goes down, it goes down somewhere between 4 to 6% a year, but the demand keeps going. Okay, we're back into that China-India kind of thing, where they've got, you know, the Chinese, they've got 3 people per 1,000 that have an automobile. And what they've done in the past is they've always picked kind of emblematic things to encourage the production and the development in the country. They started with refrigerators. And they decided years ago, many decades ago, that refrigerators were the big thing, and they were going to encourage everybody to get a refrigerator, and that would make them feel like they're making progress. They made a huge mistake, because they bought millions and millions of refrigerators, and they had no concern about the efficiency of them. And you know what they did? They are building power plants 1 a week in China so that they can keep electricity going to the refrigerators so that they can keep stability in their country, so that they don't have domestic riots. That's really how it works. And now they're trying to say that the next kind of thing to keep everybody encouraged is to give them an get an automobile. Shoot, I mean, you do that kind of stuff where you've got a decreasing, what you set up is this extraordinary need for petroleum. By the way, there's an interesting little parenthetic thing that says that you can't sell a car in China that doesn't get 35 miles per gallon. They have figured out, some engineer somewhere figured out how to get an average 35 miles per gallon in a car. And the Americans in this country say that it's impossible to do that until 2050 or some crazy thing like that. But these guys have figured it out and said that if we don't do that and take care of that, that we got some real big problems. But they got really bigger problems, because if that starts to fall off, that's kind of red out there, because that's kind of the Chinese. And now you think about that from a geopolitical point of view. They're sitting there looking at potential huge, large-scale domestic instability. Their interior minister a year or so ago said that in 2004 they had something like 47,000 riots in China. And then in 2005 they had something like 74 or 76,000 riots. And that's what he just said in public. I mean, they got a big problem if they don't keep that machine going. So if you hit that peak and you can't keep the machine going, what do? You go look to see where you can find it, don't you? You go to China, you go to Africa, to Nigeria, you go try and make deals with Chavez down in Venezuela. You look all over what you can do. Say you didn't make a deal with Chavez, right? And you say, Chavez, listen, sell me your oil, don't sell it to the United States. You know, you don't like the United States anyway, so why don't you sell it to me? We'll build a refinery that'll take the high sulfur oil, but just only available in the United States right now. We'll buy your stuff. Would Chavez do that? If Chavez did that, it would pull 17% of the oil out of the United States, like that. What would the United States do? What would Barack Obama or Hillary or somebody do if Chavez decided to pull 17% of the oil out and give it to the Chinese? I mean, what you've got here, say Chavez says no, and then they start scrambling around looking where they're going to look. Maybe they go east. Maybe they go west over the mountains and go to Russia, huh? Look, maybe there's a global war that comes out of this. I mean, this is big, serious kind of things. You get all kinds of interesting, wild scenarios out of the back end of this. Some guys say things like, civilization as we know it will come to an end sometime in this century unless we find a way to live without fossil fuels. Well, maybe not. We'll talk about it a little bit. There's wonderful kind of innovation coming along. But this is a big deal. This is a really serious kind of big deal. Let me talk to you a little bit about global finance. Here's Warren Buffett. He knows more about investing money than anybody. And Warren Buffett says the current financial system is highly unstable. And he said this a couple or 3 years ago. He didn't, he's not just responding to the subprime mortgage problems right now. Highly complex financial instruments called derivatives are time bombs. Financial weapons of mass destruction. They generate reported earnings wildly overstated. The inaccuracy aren't exposed. How much these derivatives are there? $16 trillion worth? $16 trillion are in the financial system? And he's saying there's a house of cards, and do you know anything about derivatives? This is a casino bet. This is like going to the casino and saying, yeah, I bet that somebody's going to win and somebody's going to lose. There's no equity. There's no value underneath those. And he's saying that the whole thing might all come down based upon the psychology and the confidence and all this soft stuff that could change very quickly. And then there's George Soros. George Soros just came out with a book. It's on the web 2 days ago, and he said, this is the biggest financial problem we've got right now since the 1930s, since the Great Depression. And we haven't even begun to see where this is going yet. But Soros says unless fundamental reforms are implemented, the current system will continue on a spiral of crises. I sent some of my staff when we were in Washington, Arlington. I sent them down to hear Soros, and they went down, and I think, Paul, but didn't you go? Anyway, some of them went down, and they came back afterwards, and I said, so what did he say? He said, well, it's like we've all jumped out of a high-rise building, and you're kind of halfway down, and you're kind of looking around saying, everything's okay, you know, it's all right. It's inevitable. Here it comes. Well, let me tell you, it is coming. And it is going to be significant. It's really, you haven't begun to see the problems in the financial system yet, and there's a real possibility of a global depression and some big things that are in the short term. Here's Nouriel Roubini, who's got one of the smartest kind of thinkers of all this. He says the rising risk of systemic financial meltdown, that the whole system comes down. The 12 steps to financial disaster. They're really smart. He's New York University, and there's really smart guys who are starting to say, uh-oh, the whole system could come unraveled and come down. Never had to deal with that before. This is a really different kind of place. Keep the good news coming. How about climate change? Climate change is a really big deal. I mean, they've looked at it, for the last 1,000 years, and it goes like this, and then all of a sudden, it's headed, variations of the Earth's temperature, it's headed north. Here it goes, and who knows where it is in there, but it's going up, up, up. And a lot of scientists, most of the guys, they think that there's a correlation between CO2 and the temperature. You've heard about it all, greenhouse gases and all that kind of stuff. Here's the greenhouse gases going like, whoop. Here's the greenhouse gases going along like that, and the temperature goes there, and the greenhouse gases go up, and they think that the temperature is going to go up like crazy as well. Well, it is going up like crazy. It's going up significantly for the last 50 years. Here's David Wasdell from the UK, from the Meridian Institute, and he's done some really interesting graphics. Here he says that as you move yourself up this curve of potential energy of equilibrium state. So you're moving yourself up, and you're getting higher and higher toward lack of stability, unstableness. As you go up this curve, you lose the power to intervene. You got less time, less money, right? You lose the power to intervene because it's getting hotter, and it takes more to turn it. And you get to a critical threshold, he says, and you get runaway global heating, and you go down the other side. And if you do this in 3 dimensions, it looks like this. So it's like you're running up the side of a hill, right? It's like this, and here's the unstable, at the peak of the hill is the unstable equilibrium at the top, and you're losing capability to change this thing, and if you don't get it turned over and down the other side, it goes over the other side, business as usual, and you get runaway global heating. That's the model that most scientists have about all of this. I think they're kind of wrong, by the way, but nevertheless, you're clearly into a period of time of extraordinary kind of climate change. And part of the reason why is because you get positive feedback loops. And what happens is, and this is what gives the exponential curve, and this is what makes the big change in a hurry. And that is that as you get global warming, it does things like decrease the snow and ice on the surface. And when it decreases the snow and ice on the surface, instead of have white reflective stuff that reflects the radiant heat back up into the sky, what you got is a bunch of brown dirt, and so it gets warmer. And then it gets more warming, and so then it increases the temperature and it melts more ice, right? So you get this circular kind of relationship. There's about, 8 of these things, 7 or 8 of these things that all work the same way. That once you get into those feedback loops, then suddenly it accelerates the whole process, and it goes faster and faster and faster. That's why, 6 months ago, they thought that the ice would all be gone in the Arctic Ocean in the summertime by 2050. And 6 months later, they say, oh no, it'll all be gone by 2012. And so what you get is this acceleration, that this is going faster and faster. Time magazine says, be worried, be very